ImaginAction Podcast.
Creando comunità trasformative per il
ImaginAction
futuro.
Podcast.
Social arts across borders. What have been your entry point to this journey?
I'm very grateful for my parents actually, because my parents, they met each other. They were doing social theater, actually social environmental theater, and that's how they got to know each other. So it just happened for me that I'm a privileged person that had this privilege of being born in such a family where they are already connected with this world, using social technologies to empower individuals and communities and organizations and so on. So yeah, if this started somewhere, it was definitely with my parents, and specifically with my father, because he introduced Dragon Dreaming for me, for instance, almost 10 years ago in Brazil. So yeah, this is definitely what happened. Both the musical path as the facilitator path, and the social and environmental educator path comes from this, for sure. And it was nice because seeing me at my parents as this kind of hippie people that are trying to build social enterprises. My parents, they used to do recycled paper. They were one of the first persons in Brazil to build a recycled paper industry. It didn't last long, but it was nice to see their mistakes and see them doing this kind of entrepreneurship and not knowing how to do it. And I think if you look at that expression that we are like better versions of our parents when we have some sort of good relationships with them, at least, I think I was trying to follow their steps and trying to learn best where they failed, which was actually having success by doing this kind of entrepreneurship, of social entrepreneurship.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think it's so loaded, the relationship of children and their parents, especially in the kind of the story of the West. Again, reading this book, I can hear this another possibility, although Aboriginal people now are suffering this generational drift even worse than in other societies. But the way they express and the sadness that they express, because knowledge is perceived exactly like that you are a carrier of thousands of years of knowledge, and the moment it breaks, it's really when the culture gets lost. And this is very dramatic, obviously, in a culture that was being brought in oral kind of ritualistic way for thousands and I don't know, hundreds of thousands of years maybe. But then, in the West, we are kind of taught or bought in a structure in which we struggle, which we are against. I'm not like my parents, right? And this like two ways of being and educating kind of clashes. So I love that, and I both kind of bringing because that's not obvious in a way. And yeah, maybe like the second kind of question is really, and it's interesting to see what's the connection here. It's like, what have been guiding you? What have been your principles that have been guiding you as you're developing yourself and your practice? What do you feel are your guides or guiding principles?
When I stop to think about principles, I always struggle with that, because this comes to a philosophical discussion on ethics and what is driving my spirit in the way that I manifest myself in my relationships and in my relationship with the environment, with people, and with life, and with money, and with everything I do. So I have a really hard time about thinking about like, what are my principles? What is my vision of the world? And what do I really believe? What do I take for granted or not? I would say that curiosity is one thing that really drives me. And also, I have a very hard sense of justice. You know, whenever I face social disparities, this is something that really moves me. And I wouldn't see this as a principle. Like it's not like I wanna have a perfect world where everyone has what they need, but a little bit more of equity would be nice. I know that we sometimes, like when we take these methodologies and social technologies that we work with, we talk about things like win-win-win solutions, and it must be win-win. But let's face reality, we are in a complete lose-lose or win-lose system. And it's for me, I don't want to impose for myself anymore principles that are going to take me and lead me to unreachable scenarios. I can't think utopically anymore. So I really identify myself with the pillars of the dragon, for instance, thinking about personal and organizational growth, strengthening communities, and planetary regeneration. But these are very broad things, right? So to think about my principles, I think I need to live at least 15 years more to really understand what is like written in my soul, saying that this was guiding me all along. For now, I can say that usually I am a very reactive person. I face situations which are in my context, and I try to develop solutions for that. And I have been living in very pleasant and secure situations, and at the same time, I have experienced the worst side of humanity in some places, especially in South America. In Brazil, for instance, where you can really see this kind of social disparities which are haunting humanity. And I think this is my spark, you know, and this is something I also learned with my parents. I would say I just want to make sure that whenever I am not being the best of myself and people are not being the best of themselves, at least we can talk about this. And we can experience this and being in contradiction, and then, you know, not being the best and being the worst at the same time, and living this contradiction in a way where it's okay. We can be contradictory. I don't need to be exactly what I established to me as a guiding principle, and I don't need to be a nonviolent communication master to talk about nonviolent communication. I don't need to be an illuminated yogi to talk about meditation or mindfulness or this kind of stuff. So the principle which is really guiding me so far is a very famous phrase from Timothy Leary, which is think for yourself and question authority. That's what I would say.
The next one is really about the dragons, let's say, the challenges. What are the frustrations and challenges you are meeting as you're trying to kind of realize this path? If you can share some.
Yeah, I think for me, the worst challenge is to organize myself to do everything I want and to not to be frustrated on because I want to do lots of things, and then I start something and then I can't finish, and then I start something else, and this is very frustrating. This can be very frustrating. So I'm learning how to deal with this priority thing that grown-up people need to deal with. How should I prioritize the things that I actually want to do? There are so many huge projects and so many nice projects that I could get involved with, that I start meeting people and they're doing so many great stuff. Should I start something new? Should I join forces with something that is already happening? I think these are the struggle that I don't think it's just for me, it's for you, and it's for everyone else in this scenario that we are working with. Like, should we follow the giants? Should we try to build something giant by ourselves? Should we just face something small and understand that this is going to be my role, just to acting locally, but this is already a glocal action, right? So so yeah, I think for me the biggest dragon that I have been facing in my life is I consider myself a multi-potential person. So I really like to do all sorts of things. I like to brew my own beer. I like to cook my own food and to grow my own food and to develop my own personalized softwares and to compose symphonies. So how the fuck do I prioritize this kind of stuff, you know? And I think this is the struggle of the modern human in a society where we are being completely harassed by information all the time and overloaded and overwhelmed with all that, you know. And when we learn how to you know, go through this self-directed learning path, we see that there is so many to learn, and it's so nice. We can do so much, but a day still has only 24 hours, you know. So I think my biggest dragon is dealing with my frustration when I'm having to prioritize where am I going to put my energy on, you know.
In a way, it's good troubles, I guess. You know, it's respect to other people that maybe are not on their path at all, and they don't see even a possibility of realizing oneself. So, and I guess this brings to the question about kind of what have been the gifts that you have found in this path. And again, you know, all those things, and you know, you're facilitating groups and processes, and what has been the gifts, treasures?
Yeah, I think the biggest gift I received in all of this journey was to meet all of these amazing people. And with these amazing people, I learned lots of different things. I mean, I cannot dissociate everything that I learned from the amazing people that I have met. So today I'm working, for instance, designing gamified experiences for education and designing self-directed learning processes and group dynamics applied to all sorts of projects, environmental projects, health projects, scientific projects, scientific research projects. It doesn't matter the context anymore. And this is because of the variety of people that I have met. For instance, I'm working with a guy that he kind of learned, he built his own blend of a nonviolent communication approach inspired in Rosenberg's model. And he's a very accessible person, you know, and with him we have been creating all sorts of crazy stuff. Now, for instance, we just developed a game which was inspired in the work that reconnects from Joanna Macy. We took the 10 fears that Joanna talks about in Coming Back to Earth, the book, and we built a card deck out of this, you know. And this is the kind of stuff that, like, for instance, when I met you and we started talking about the games that we were developing and this kind of stuff, I think that's where everything happens, you know. We are studying in our little rooms and in our little lives, but when we meet people, when we join forces, it's a cliche, I know, but the whole is completely bigger than the sum of the individual parts. That's it. So the biggest gift I received was this ability of being a social extrovert person that can just cross borders and meet all sorts of people.
But yeah, maybe we can talk more about the game afterwards and in the next part. But actually, this is the last question for this sequence, which is if you would be giving an advice to someone just starting this path, or yourself just starting this path, what would it be?
Well, it's another cliche, but cliches they have a reason to be, right? And I mean, I am still giving this advice for myself every day, and I learned this with by reading some bullshit of neurolinguistic programming. But then I learned this again with John Croft, in the Dragon's Journey, right? And the thing is, fake until you make it. You need to fake it. You need to pretend that you're already there, and just try and do it and get fucked, and then you go again until you make it. And I think that's the what we want to say when we say the common saying of the dragon, of the perfect is enemy of the good. And in Sociocratic terms, we say we just need something which is good enough to go, just good enough for now, and safe enough to try, right? So whenever we are starting anything, and not just in this field of social transformation and innovation, whenever we are trying anything, if we just, instead of trying to analyze things and plan everything with all of the details, or trying to look with different perspectives, just go there and do it. It's like Rumi when he says that, come on guys, why are you're talking about all these sorts of bullshit? I meet you outside. There is a field there.
We can move to the next sequence, which is, the first one is really about, so it's really about the now, what's happening now for you. And the first part is what keeps you busy right now? What are you busy with? What are your projects at the moment? So you started to say something, but maybe you can say a little bit more about that.
Yeah, right now my energy is basically being invested in 3 projects. One is collab design, which is this journey of social technologies where we make a research on very different methods that can be combined and serve people and communities when facing complex problems, any kind of complex problem. So this can be developing a social project, building a company, restoring a whole forest, rebuilding a town, whatever. And we use all of these different mixtures where we are trying to follow nature when doing that. And this is basically where I put all of my energy right now. And then the little bit which is left, I invest as a consultant for a few different projects, which I put in only one bucket for me, which is my consultant project, with a few different NGOs, companies, and organizations that I mentor, and this is from where I get my money as well. And the other thing is Facilita, the platform that we are building, which is a platform for virtual facilitated games. And this platform, we are doing it in the most simple way, as you saw the prototype that we built. And now we just released it, and we are ready to start building like very simple meeting games, just to bring a bit more of fun to the virtual world in this horrible and cold medium that we are being forced to use in this pandemic scenario. So this is where I'm putting my energy now. But there are some projects that are appearing, like I'm helping an application of mental health now to develop their software and I'm helping them with self-managed approaches to guide their development process. And also there is a very nice project going through collab design with female prisonal service. It's like a progression unit where they use restorative practices of restorative justice, and we are doing a collaborative design process with the female agents that work in this prison, in this jail, right? And this is being epic. This is being just really nice. It's just like we are working with 25 women who are the agents that are going to be taking care of these imprisoned women there, you know. And we are working with social theater, with social presence in theater, with theater of the oppressed. We are working with design thinking with them, and nonviolent communication and restorative justice and all this kind of approaches. And they just did a prototype. It was 2 students from the collab design, and now they invited us from the collab design organization to help them and to mentor them in the process. And this is great, really great news. So yeah, it's pretty much these 3 arms that I'm working on now, and I want to work now so I can really focus in developing games, because this is my passion for the moment. I want to build games for social impact and help people to reconnect with themselves, with nature through this. And since we are being forced to stay in this digital world, trying to bring some humanity to this.
How can social arts support the world, humanity, at this time of transition, of change?
Well, I'm gonna try to take a Jungian perspective on this, but I might talk lots of bullshit because Jung is very difficult to decipher and to really talk with property when you say anything about him. So if any Jungian hears this, sorry. I think art in general is a manifestation of our different parts of ourself and our psyche and the different facets of our psyche. So whenever a human makes art, and spontaneous art, not technical art necessarily, but also technical art, I would see as some sort of manifestation of the unconscious. Both the personal and the collective unconscious, of course. But here I'm talking more about the artistic process as being an attempt of the conscious mind to organize the unconscious mind. And it's really interesting because there are some great studies talking about art therapy, and including in Brazil, from where I come from. There is this psychiatrist, this woman called Nízia da Silveira. She did an amazing experiment there, helping people who were completely misjudged by the society as crazy people and lost, completely crazy. And at that time, they were using those lobotomy process and electroshock process. And she was there trying to bring a Jungian perspective and say, no, there is something that you guys are not taking in account. The psyche is not physical. You cannot heal it just sticking a nail in someone's head, you know. And she did an amazing work with them by bringing art for them and making them express themselves by sculpting objects and painting pictures and all this kind of stuff. And they were amazing, discovered that they were amazing artists after all. And there is a permanent exposition actually of the paintings that they did. It was absolutely crazy that non-instructed people did something like that. And this, everything, I'm just using this to illustrate what I'm saying, that when we talk about social arts and any kind of art in general, and a collective production of art. This is a manifestation of the spirit of that time, and this is a manifestation of the unconscious, the personal unconscious of the people who are doing that, and of the society as a whole. I mean, this is a very bold affirmation that, and I might be completely wrong. And of course, these are just names for things that we don't really know what it is. No one knows what the unconscious is. But I think if this unconscious exists, and if there is a collective unconscious, I think humanity is aware, or at least unconsciously aware, that we are not in a good place right now. We are not doing right. We are not connected. We are completely disconnected. Human beings are not seen as nature anymore. There is a very strict distinction. We are not part of nature anymore. We forgot about that. So I think when we talk about social arts, our collective, it's like an attempt of our collective unconscious to reorganize our psychotic traces of the society into something that makes sense.
So the next question is kind of from the now, but looking to the future, and it's about what is your wildest dream? What is for the future? What you would say would be your wildest dream, or kind of wish, dream?
Yeah, that's a hard one. The wildest one. They're all so crazy. I don't know, maybe my wildest dream would be, I think we would come back to the beginning of living in contradiction and being okay with it. And it probably includes also some sort of disruption of the economic system as we have it now. And probably also includes some sort of, like true integration with nature in a scientific and, I'm talking more like about a cyberpunk scenario where we could actually develop all of our scientific solutions based on nature, and having all of that, everything, we would have nature as a mentor, as a way of measuring things, as a reference for everything. So we would be a nature-centric, an eco-centric society. This is my wildest dream, for sure. And there are many ways to do that, and many people talking about this kind of stuff for quite a while now. But unfortunately, nowadays, we are still facing the dichotomy of socialism versus capitalism. Although I do think that Marx, he was totally right, and he completely nailed. And we probably, I'm yet to find a better critic of our current system now. So looking at the future, I would like to see something, a society which is based in the principle of smallification, where instead of thinking everything big, we would thinking everything small, and we need to have small groups of people, and we need to have small production cycles where everyone can produce your food locally and energy locally. Just everything that we have in the macro scale now, we would just invert it to a micro scale. This would fulfill me a lot. This would be my wildest dream, which I really think is not utopic. I think it could actually be achieved.
Yeah, I like this word, smallification.
Oh, this is from Edwin Maria John, it's the guy from the neighborhood parliament that did neighborhood parliament, children's parliament, and women parliament. It's a movement in India, in Kerala. It's really nice. He built like an alternative parliament with more than I think it's more than 10 million persons in India, and it was so strong, the system that they built, that when you go to the police station in some places there, they tell you to look for the for the local agents of the parliament. Because they don't recognize that they themselves have influence anymore in the social system. So yeah, it's, and he talks about it, you know, you need to make it small. You cannot have a circle of people with more than 30 persons, because this is the limit of persons you can have, so you can speak in out loud and everyone will hear you.
Yeah, that's nice. And of course, like it's sort of kind of the paradox is that technology allows us to do the opposite now. Or well, although, you know, I feel that this whole Zoom situation or whatever visual, I felt I had moments in which I was holding bigger events, but I must say, and that was great. There is certain things that were happening there, but I must say, like really the small group, it has a lot of power in it. Also on the, it has a different quality somehow. But then, you know, I think it's the parallel between how you move from that small group to the bigger group. It's a really,
yeah. I think there are different typologies. You know, you have mass communication typologies and experiences that you can do with 300 persons. But if you want to connect people, we always do that peer to peer. And I really like using this resource online as well. You know, having couples or triads of people, you know, and you can always strengthen bonds by having smaller groups, and you grow from small to big, and mixing smaller groups is always very nice as well. Mixing groups of triads, for instance.
Yeah. Well, I think we can have a whole conversation on technology. I know that you have experience and experimenting with a lot of stuff, and also the creative part. To this final sequence of questions, which is about building a network, because one of the premise, or what I'm trying to kind of move with ImaginAction, and kind of I'm basically implementing Dragon Dreaming in some way as a sort of self-appointed consultant for ImaginAction, because I see the potential of building a network across borders of social arts. And the question that I'm asking people, and it might be one of the conversation point for the panels as well, is, you know, what do you see the importance of such a network and mentoring? And then what would you like to give or receive in such a network? So it's actually 3 questions, but we can bring them somehow. They're connected. So the importance of the network, and at the same time, where do you see yourself in that? Like, what would you like to give and receive?
Well, I think what I would need today in this kind of network is some sort of learning community. And, you know, having steady rituals that are continuously being made, and very clear onboarding processes that are building community. And I think this is what makes a difference in a network nowadays for me, and I think for everyone else. Because if you have a network that doesn't have continuous rituals that are feeding the participants, and they have an organic way of doing these meetings where they celebrate the network and they learn together. It just doesn't work. If you look at Dragon Dreaming, for instance, we don't have this kind of rituals there. The only ritual we have is the Con Festival that happens sometimes, but it's not a continuous thing. So we don't even have the feeling that we have a network. It's a bunch of people that like each other and use something called the Dragon Dreaming, you know. And I think this is what I have been missing in all of the networks I have been part of, and this is what I like in the networks that I am a part of, that where they do that. They have very clear callings for the rituals that they do, where people learn together, work together, and celebrate. And they have guardians to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good tip. That's a good tip, I think, right about now. Yeah, I think we are starting to form things. It's emerging still very much, but hopefully through those events and the fundraising events and the exchanges that are starting to be built. And I feel it's very delicate sometimes. There is certain patterns that happen in groups. I see it in groups that I witness or I'm part of. So there is this, I don't know how you experience that, but there is this, there is a certain moment in a group that it risks to become kind of self-referential, and it gets stuck in a certain dynamic, and then it becomes kind of closed and not clear, and also it's really interesting in this kind of alternative world. The tendency again is kind of to reject the old model, but of organizing and kind of idealizing another one, but then maybe falling into a lot of traps in the middle. I guess.
Yeah, it's the invisible structure, the structure of the structureless organizations. There is always a structure, man. And it's, I think we are all going to pass through these stages of ups and downs. It doesn't matter how good we are in organizing ourselves or how connected we are. It's just a cycle. It's a breathing process. It's nature happening right there, So if we have a very clear structure, this is like, I am part of a network now called Target Teal, and they have very clear agreements, and they make sure that they make everything clear. Like if you want to know how to make part of the network, they have a very clear onboarding process and a very clear distinction from if you are a member of the network or if you are working for the network, for the network organization, And how do we deal with money? How can you use the materials that we produce and all that? And so I think this is very good, because this is a true invitation with transparency, where we invite people, and it's different. If you go and say to someone like, oh, do you want to make part of this network? Here is what we do, and then you present it in an artistic way or a very simple way with a landing page and a manifesto, and then you have a document which is more like a policy document. Okay, look, if you come here, this is how it works. This is how we deal with money. This is how you enter the network. This is how you find our files where you can take your doubts. These are our communication channels, and blah blah blah, and this kind of stuff. This is what I have been longing in this kind of, especially in the social arts movement.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I'm not sure myself how to create it. I always have difficulty myself. But I feel we're definitely not there. But there is some patterns, and it's more like what are the patterns, and kind of starting from the patterns. So we are trying to. So there is right now officially there is two types of roles. One is social arts facilitators, and the other is advisors, and they're advising in a certain area. And the division is kind of hard to sometimes make, and we kind of make the invitations personally somehow, and I try to make the invitations when it's clear for me that it makes sense. And sometimes I'm sitting with someone for a long time and I'm trying to figure out if it makes sense, and if it's more an advisor. And I guess the advisor is more someone that has a, it's not about age, but it's about kind of mentoring the network. And it's also about how to scale it without kind of growing too fast and kind of losing the edges of the thing. The other agreements, which is really cool, some of that is about capacity building, so some of it is around, so, and we are testing several things through as I'm rolling out for the first time an online workshop. I'm testing different tools so we can have a system in which we can pay people in a way that doesn't become a nightmare, or we don't need to create an international cooperation, and it works in terms of the technical logistical level. But it's definitely challenging. I also feel that it's really about accessibility and recognizing diversity of education, capacity, and languages, and how to be inclusive. Sometimes we create rules, but then we're not worried with, does everybody understand how rules and the language of the rules, right? Or so and then becomes kind of anyway, it's another network I'm observing of alternative currency, and they're making their constitution, and it's already 91 pages long, and I was like, oh geez, like I cannot be, I just imagine someone else trying to figure out this collective document with 91 pages. And yeah, so it's like having it like really light and accessible, but I think we're still patterning it somehow, and recognizing that the starting position is, it's an organization that has been around for 20 years, and it has a founder, and which has been really important and still is really important, and we're kind of trying to build the central kind of circle that holds space, and then expand it as a network. And then I guess this kind of layering of that, and building a culture somehow. I really like this tip about building the rituals and the culture. And yeah, I think it's a really good invitation as we're moving forward, and how to do it in a collective way that it doesn't end up to be a 91 91 pages constitution Google Doc process with very heavy, that then excludes people that are not this kind of thinkers, somehow. Or
Yeah, actually, I it's not about having a constitution, it's about having, in sociocracy we call this policies. It's a policy making process, right? And a policy, it's just an agreement. So, but you need to have a way of managing this agreement. You need to have a system. You need to have a model where you store these agreements. And if people want to go there and see the agreements, this is it. The thing is, communities, living communities, they have like well-established processes of onboarding, of selecting people to come to the organization, and offboarding as well, right? You must have a process for that, and this is all very clear. It's not about having a 90 pages document. It's just about clarifying what is our purpose, what is our invitation, what do we expect from you? Because usually in this kind of alternative movements in general, it's like we are a bit afraid of structure. There is a general resistance that this is going to be limiting. But of course, we don't need like everything absolutely well structured and to the minimum detail. It's just clarifying our basic agreements, you know. I can share with you, maybe this is how I can contribute. I can share with you a few models. I am also working in this process of network building, and our agreement, it's only like a one-page document.
Remind our listeners and viewers or whoever is going to see that in the future. Yeah, so to check out Ravi, raviresck.com and Collab Design and Facilitas Social, you know, in the velocity in which Ravi works, by the time this is out, it might be that all of those would become even you know, a global cooperation of regeneration, but I don't know. People listening to us in the future, they're living our wildest dreams, and that maybe we are living them as well, hopefully. And and yeah, thank you so much, and good night.
Rudy. Thank you very much, my friends. Big hug and good night.
Building transformative communities for future.
Nosotros creemos que la imaginación es el derecho universal.
Podcast ImaginAction.
We believe imagination is our universal right and regeneration is our collective responsibility. If you like the podcast, like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Support me in making the podcast on Ko-fi/ImaginAction, and stay tuned for the next episode.